excited to be joined today by Stacey Savage, and we are going to dive into the topic of waste. So, thank you, Stacey, for joining me. And could you give us a little bit of an intro to yourself?
Sure. My name is Stacey Savage, aka the Texas Trash Talker, and I'm founder and CEO of Zero Waste Strategies, which is an environmental consulting firm, but we specialize in waste reduction for businesses, institutions like higher education campuses, and municipal governments as well. So we work with clients to help them reduce waste to landfill.
I love that. Yeah, I think that we're going to have a lot to cover, and I love your little moniker. It's amazing. I think what some people might be interested to learn is that although the US is only about a fifth of the world's population, we produce about 12% of the planet's municipal solid waste. And admittedly, I don't actually know what that means. So maybe you could fill us in on that.
Well, we have, as a country, have relied over the last 120 or so years on burying our materials in a hole in the ground and then covering it with dirt. And it's just not a sustainable practice. You'll see, some landfills in some cities and counties across the state of Texas here, or even in the country, are the highest points in that local community. I was actually standing on top of a landfill not even a month ago, watching all the trucks come in and dump, and we were doing a municipal waste characterization study for a city in Missouri. And I stood on top of that landfill, looked around 365 degrees, or no, that's too many, 360 degrees. Um, and it was the tallest point the entire way around. So yeah, we have been layering our trash for decades and generations, and it just doesn't work for our society. It doesn't work for our economy. It doesn't work for the health of the future of the planet and our children and their children. So what are we doing about it? We're talking zero waste.
Yeah, that's what I'm really excited to talk to you about. So maybe for those that don't know, could you tell us what zero waste means?
Sure. So globally, zero waste is a business efficiency concept, and it has come into play in cities all over the world, in major corporations, small mom and pops, and it is defined as a 90% waste reduction or more. Let's put the or more in there, 90% or more, from landfills and incinerators. And it allows companies to be much more responsible with the materials that they're generating, the output that goes out the back into the dumpsters. And so that material, usually the recyclable and compostable materials like food waste or yard waste, very, very high intrinsic value on the commodities market. So think about cardboard and how durable it is and how many times it can be remade into other types of materials, even metals, copper and aluminum, steel. All of these can be reused and repurposed into other types of uses. But if we're burying them in a hole in the ground, or if we're burning them off in an incinerator, those are lost to us forever, even though we put the same amount of time, energy, money, and effort to extract the raw materials and to refine them into the products that eventually end up on our store shelves, and then we dump them. So that's a linear economy, A to Z. What our job is as zero waste enthusiasts and advocates and consultants is to champion the circular economy. It takes the two ends of the linear economy and puts them in a loop. And this way, all of the materials that come in also get reused multiple times before the end of their life. It's just a reuse and refinement process for, and even repair, remanufacturing, refabrication, all of these kind of re's that we talk about in the three R's for reduce, reuse, recycle. There's more like nine R's if we're really getting down to the nitty gritty.
Okay, wow. We might have to dig deeper on that one, but I think what you bring up is a really good point. And I think a lot of people have doubts around, the recycling ecosystem or like what they can do matters. But at the end of the day, using virgin materials versus using, reused materials can have such a big impact. And so much of what we're seeing in landfills is stuff that can be recovered, whether it be food waste, which we think is about a quarter of what's in landfills and produces a ton of methane. And we even know that around 18% of the US emissions of methane are coming from landfills, which is wild. So, with all this in mind and the opportunity to keep stuff out of landfill and think with a zero waste mindset, what do you recommend to organizations?
Well, the first step is to really look at your purchasing practices. What are you bringing into the business? Because let's face it, you're paying for it twice. You're bringing it into the business. You're using it wherever. So let's say that you order a box of tomatoes because your kitchen needs them to create the soup of the day, and they don't use them all. And whatever they did produce for that soup of the day went to employees, or they sold it at a cafeteria or their restaurant. And, if you don't use those up, well, they're going to rot eventually. And so that's not responsible materials management. The second way that you pay for them is that they go out the dumpster because they rotted. And so the timing was off. They weren't used in time, but you've already paid for it once bringing it in and then once putting it out in the dumpsters. So that that trash hauler or your compost hauler still has to come around and scoop up the materials for you, bring them off your property so that you don't have a major waste nightmare on your hands at your property. So, uh, being able to look at your purchasing practices, and the Environmental Protection Agency actually has an environmentally preferable purchasing practices guideline that you can take a look at. We just call it the EPPP, and it's a mouthful, but the EPPP gives purchasing departments the practical guidelines of buying in bulk as well as buying materials for your office like paper and other kinds of office supplies and that type of thing for your systems that you're going to need on in every department, every floor that you have employees on. It gives you the proper guidance to make sure that you're buying things that are made from recycled materials, for
Hmm.
instance, so that we're not buying the virgin raw materials, the new products, that we're really investing in products that have been recycled. So that's one. And then the
Yeah.
second thing is, let's do a deep dive into your trash. Our team, we get up to our elbows for 6 hours in somebody else's trash. So we'll do a waste audit where we're going to take a look at all of your waste streams: trash, recycling, composting. Maybe you have or excuse me, not household hazardous waste, but any hazardous waste on site,
Mhm.
depending on what your industry is. And we'll look at all those waste streams. When we do trash, recycling, and food waste composting streams, we get down to the nitty gritty as well as down to the gum wrapper. So we're up to our necks in your trash. But this allows us to get the real time waste data that is so critical to uh, producing new policies for your business that can help with waste diversion, and it can help you get your landfill trash bill down. The more that divert for recycling and food waste composting, the less that you're trashing. So you can actually work with your hauler, and you can revise your hauler pickup agreement, and maybe
Yeah.
you have less dumpsters, maybe you've got smaller dumpsters. Maybe you don't have to have 5 times a week pickup. Maybe it's just three. So any cash savings that you realize on the hauler end for your trash, you can put into and funnel into your new programs for recycling and composting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's interesting whether we're talking about, landfill or incineration. Over half of what people are sending to get incinerated can be recycled or composted. So there's such a huge opportunity to limit the emissions, limit the energy, limit the cost, to take care of what we're trashing. Now, for those of us that are listening that might be individuals and are like, great, that's what, my county can do, that's what my company can do, but what can I do? What do you recommend as an individual or maybe a zero waste family, for people to try and take action?
Yeah, I would say that all zero waste practices are good for business and the household, and they're actually scalable. So you can do your own mini waste audit at your own house. You can take the kids outdoors, you can put your trash and recycling out, or maybe you just have trash. And then you can put some gloves on and start picking the waste and see what categories are starting to end up in, bigger amounts than others. And you can get the composition. You can say, okay, well, it looks like food waste is about 40% of our waste stream. So how can we reduce our food waste? Well, let's get a compost tumbler and put it on the side yard. Okay, let's do that. You can instill those good habits into your kids at a very young age. Another is, look at secondhand shopping and looking at thrift stores rather than buying new, even if they're for Christmas gifts, even if it's a baby shower, you can always go home and wash that plushy toy. So look at thrifting, and also give your kids the ability to make decisions. The things that they have outgrown, they could actually make the decision to donate. And again, that puts a, sharing is caring kind of quality, or kind of mentality for kids at a very young age, where they deciding, I don't want to hold on to this anymore, mommy. Okay, well, let's give it to somebody else. So that's another really great way to get the kiddos involved. And in fact, I just published, on Earth Day of last year, my book, which is The Zero Waste Family, and it's a guide for or for families that want to reduce waste. It goes through every single room of the household. It goes through what can be done for events, for birthday parties, Christmas, how to plan, what to do with all the food waste, even how to do proper head counting so that you're not overproducing food, and also what to do on vacation. How do you do low waste vacations for a family? So we go through all of that, and there's even a kids section dedicated just for children's toys and clothing and all kinds of stuff. So there's even worksheets for the kids, coloring pages, games, all of that. So that is on Amazon. It's on the Kindle platform.
That's awesome. I feel like that sounds like a really invaluable resource and it sounds super digestible the way you've broken it down. Any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I think it just takes one simple step, and it's not about perfection, it's about progress. And that
I
goes
love
for businesses and households as well. And folks can just reach out to me as well, DM me through LinkedIn, or check our Facebook, business page, Zero Waste Strategies. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok. So, we can be contacted in a multitude of ways. But yeah, I think the book is going to be the most comprehensive for families that want to go zero waste.
Amazing. Well, Stacey, thank you so much for helping break down zero waste for whoever might be interested and keeping it cool and a topic of interest. I thank you for your time, and we look forward to digging into our trash bins potentially.
You'll find a lot of treasure in there.